When it comes to impactful moments in video games, there's nothing more classic than good old boss fights. They're a common point of discussion among players of any game, sharing their experiences facing them and how they develop their strategies. For speedrunners, bosses are broken down in much more detail, then practiced to the point that they become no more than a minor obstacle. Haste bosses are no exception to this, and despite the nature of RNG in this game, a little bit of ingenuity goes a long way. In today's video, I'll be taking you through how the Haste speedrunning community optimized a boss fight by throwing caution to the wind and turning convention on its head. Let's get into it. Haste has 4 unique bosses: Jumper, Convoy, Snake, and the Machine. The Machine is the final boss fight of the final shard. Meanwhile, the other 3 are specific to the shards in their respective biome: Jumper in grass shards, Convoy in desert, and Snake in ice. Each of these bosses has 3 variants, which account for the 9 shards that precede the final shard. Every boss is worth covering in their own video. Believe me, Jumper 3 will be discussed in greater detail. For this one, we'll be covering Convoy, as you may have guessed by the title and thumbnail. Convoy is the boss of shards 2, 5, and 8. It's a giant machine that travels along the desert, attacking the player using laser cannons found on its body, as well as scattered around nearby. This remains true for each of its variants as well. Convoy 2 adds more laser cannons to the fight, and Convoy 3 adds even more laser cannons to the fight. And that's it! Or at least that was the only change, until patch 1.3.b added lasers on the inside of Convoy 3 as well. At the start of any boss fight, you're always greeted with the same message: attack the machine. That's cool and all, but where exactly? Well, Jumper taught me to slam my face into the machine. Let's try that. Nope, we just concussed Zoe. Convoy is unique in that the objective is to run around to the back of the machine, run through the inside while dodging spinning obstacles, and hit the core to deal damage. You're then ejected out the front hatch of Convoy and sent back into the desert, where you then repeat the process again. From a casual perspective, I quite like this design. Taking this giant machine down from the inside is satisfying. When it comes to speedrunning though, this process is less than ideal. For as fun as 3 laps around Baby Park is, there's ultimately only one thing we need to do for this boss, and that's hit the core on the inside 3 times consecutively. How might we do that, you may be asking? You are asking that, right? It's actually quite simple. So simple, in fact, that it's something you could stumble upon during a casual playthrough, as I did myself. As I mentioned before, when you hit Convoy's core, you're sent flying out the front hatch. You're given a large boost of speed to ensure that you're sent flying far enough before the hatch closes again. Despite this clear intent to try and eject you from the machine, there's a variable that doesn't change during this which we can take advantage of: Zoe's turn speed. When you hit the core, simply strafe toward either side wall and turn your camera in that same direction. The invulnerability you gain from dealing damage to Convoy will shield you from taking any damage, instead causing you to bounce off the wall. We can then turn back toward the inside of Convoy, and as the hatch closes, we've successfully stayed inside. Now, the first thing you'll notice when watching this is that we can't actually hit the core again afterwards. This is because there's a cooldown on hitting the core, somewhere in the ballpark of about 4 to 5 seconds or so. It's no big deal, since turning around inside of Convoy is still way faster than running around to the back. Now that we're here though, what even is the best way of turning around inside Convoy? We can hold back to get Zoe to slow down, but due to the speed we gain from hitting the core, this often sends us past the last spinning obstacle and is overall really slow. We can try turning around by strafing, but again, we have so much speed that we can't turn wide enough without slamming into the wall. Fortunately for us, there's a rather convenient way of turning around, and it doesn't require sacrificing any speed at all. Take a look at the spinning obstacle here inside Convoy. This beveled part on the outside is slanted in such a way that we can use it as a ramp to launch off of, as opposed to colliding with it like the rest of Convoy. We do bump the wall along the way, but it's well worth it, as using this technique, we can quick cycle Convoy in no time flat. This piece of collision is beneficial in no-hit runs as well, as you can dive into it to get a bad landing, avoiding the damage you'd take from using the normal method. Alright, this is coming along pretty well. Where the other 2 main bosses require you to run around chasing them after each hit, Convoy can be defeated in a much more controlled manner. Seems to be fairly well optimized, right? Nope, we're still not done. Running around to the back of Convoy is too slow. If only there were a quicker way to get inside the machine. All we need to do is hit the core, and it's just right there. From the earliest days of Haste's release, there was a known quirk with Convoy, later being dubbed what we now know as Convoy Clip. It allowed you to bypass Convoy altogether, entering the front right where the core is. The trick was discovered by runner Snek, and was, at the time, not very well understood. Our initial assumption was that the collision for Convoy contained gaps, particularly around the crease where the hatch is. With nothing else to go off of, we took to flying straight toward the front of Convoy, aiming to squeeze through this supposed gap. As you could probably guess, this method was inconsistent, at best. There had to be something we didn't understand. Either the supposed gaps were so small that they weren't able to be hit reliably, or our entire premise was just wrong. There was another method developed shortly after, and it involved getting on top of Convoy, slowing down as you reach the front, and then falling right in. While this method was fairly reliable, certainly more so than the gap method, the hard part wasn't actually getting on top of Convoy, getting turned to run toward the front, and slowing down at the right time to fall in and not get hit, all while doing this as fast as possible. Ultimately, it wasn't that much better than running around to the back, assuming you could do so quickly. So, with a trick that seemed as random as the rest of the run, most runners opted not to go for it, and the trick ended up as this iffy time save that's rarely worth going for. That was, for most runners anyway. There was one runner who wasn't quite satisfied with this outcome. Enter the runner Bep. They took the time to do what the rest of us wouldn't. Actually sit down and experiment with Convoy Clip. You know, for a trick that saves as much time as this one, maybe we should have been more proactive in the search for answers, huh? Anyway, back to Bep. Through their extensive theory crafting and testing, they'd eventually discover a far more consistent method of clipping in a convoy. It involved something that most wouldn't even consider: getting in front of Convoy and slowing down, letting Convoy hit you instead of vice versa. Unlike the gap theory that was prevalent before, this one had variables we could actually control. Our speed and positioning at which we approached Convoy significantly influenced how successful the clip was. As time went on and more runners adopted this method, learning its intricacies, there was a steady increase in consistency over time, eventually reaching the point that most runners always go for it, not even thinking twice. As with the quick kill strat, Convoy Clip has also been refined over time, and even still works in the current version of Haste, which, as of the time of making this video, is patch 1.7.e. There's a great video by current any% world record holder Rasmusic that goes over a method for learning the clip, so if you're interested in learning it for yourself, check out the link in the video description. Also, one more shout out to Bep. They helped refine all of Convoy as it's known today, including the quick kill method discussed earlier. It's safe to say that things wouldn't have developed nearly as quickly if it weren't for their testing. Now then, with both quick kill and Convoy Clip at our disposal, let's see what an optimal Convoy looks like. Well, there you have it. We can now clip in the front of Convoy, hit the core right away, and then bounce off the wall inside to start the quick kill cycle. This is about as far as we can realistically optimize Convoy. In an ideal world, we could fly straight from the start into the core, and then hit it at the exact frame it goes off cooldown, but neither of these are manageable given what we know currently. And that doesn't mean that there aren't other quirks worth talking about with Convoy, though. Here are a few of them. If we assume that Convoy Clip works because Convoy is the one colliding with Zoe, we can apply that in different ways. There were alternate ways of clipping found, such as side clipping, where you'd run along the side of Convoy and slowly approach it until clipping through. You can also sometimes phase out of Convoy from the inside for the same reasons, though this is much more rare. When it comes to the quick kill cycle, if you're using the grapple hook ability, you can instead use grapple to swing yourself back around towards the core, no running up the side of Convoy required. Just be sure to wait long enough, otherwise you'll fly through the core before its cooldown ends. Another grapple exclusive trick comes from the start of the fight. If you run off to the right towards this rock, you can get a trick called a wakeboard that locks your grapple at the center of the map. There's not any real application to this one other than potentially getting you in front of Convoy faster, but hey, it looks cool, I guess. These are just some of the many cool things you can do with grapple, and I have another video coming out soon where I talk about grapple specifically, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Before we wrap up today's video, here's a quick bit of trivia regarding Convoy. On patch 1.2.e, the devs broke Convoy more than speedrunners ever had. Quite literally, in fact, as the boss became completely immortal in this patch. Hitting the core would still deplete health, but the hatch wouldn't open and you'd bounce back into the core. This was essentially a soft lock, since Convoy wouldn't die no matter how many times you hit it. Thankfully, a hotfix came out a few hours later, reverting Convoy to how it normally is. With all that said, it's about time to call it a wrap. Haste is such a unique speed game, and I can't wait to share more of it. If you're in the mood for more Haste content, be sure to check out this video, where I talk about the most broken item combination in all of Haste speedrunning. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.